Really wanted to do this video after our prospect episode and some feedback from people like John, and wanted to throw my thoughts out there, like really revisiting how I think about prospects. Hopefully, we get Barry on also, who had some rebuttals to our episode. Maybe when Derek gets back to the Philippines or whatever. But thought I'd throw this out there, especially since Gas is asking me my opinion as well. And in that episode, I talked about John with Byfield, and to be clear, what I said was what I meant to say was over the years I've heard offers that he's been getting through the grapevine, and they were crazy. That's what I heard, and that he wasn't even close to accepting any of the offers. But now that Byfield's value is tanked a little, maybe that there'd be a trade that happens. And but when I say Byfield values tanking, right? Like I have to go back and revisit. There are some prospects that take like highly drafted prospects that take a long time to develop. Like we're talking about, for example, Nathan McKinnon, right? Took 4 years before, the Dan Jake rivalry about this. 4 years before he spiked to a point per game player, and we have Lindholm, also someone that comes to mind for me, a top five pick, and then he had one, two, three, four, 5 seasons of 40-ish points, half of a game, half a point per game rather, and then before he just spikes to close to a point per game, 54 to 78 here, but then like it looks like firmly in the point per game territory. So um, if we go with Yfield quickly here, um, he's not even close, right? He's in his sorta second season, right? Pseudo second season. So is it even fair to say that his value has tanked? And then, I think that just because when we look at people who do these lists, and there's many of them, and that's not to say Corey Pronman is going to be right a lot. He's actually, for fantasy purposes, he's actually been wrong a lot. I've been following him for a decade or something like that. So, but you'll notice that a lot of people will drop off really quick. He's kept Lafreniere at 10, but you can see like the new toys, the new guys like Slakowski, Wright, Cooley, they're all ahead of Byfield already, right? And we have, when we talked about John also having um, Kako 48th, Kakaniemi 49th, Eklund, who I overrated in the prospect episode with Derek. He's dropped down to 50, and then we have, I believe McTavish is 24, right behind Byfield. But this is like pure hockey, not fantasy purposes. But then I think about this, and it's like maybe I'm influenced by this list. Is it fair for guys like that to think that they've dropped behind all this like fresh talent, when of course we've just seen like it can take a while for someone to become one of the best players in the game, and the Byfield can obviously follow that trajectory. So it's hard for me to say how to evaluate this, like with that in mind, and hoping to open discussion with other GMs that have some thoughts on this topic. And the reason why I tend to, in general, don't value a lot of blue chippers or a lot of good prospects is because I think that there's just so many of them year to year. And I'm showing this just to prove, I guess, a point. Like last season, I dropped these guys, but they ended up being drafted, either kept or drafted pretty high or valued pretty high on lists. So last year already, because of, if you just follow a lot of just random AHL news, I had Jack Quinn near the end of last season. I had Perfetti. I was sad that when I dropped him, Dan did the smart job of picking him up late in the season. So it seems to me, and we've seen this, like we've seen in the past, Tolvanen albeit called up late by the AHL. We've seen guys like, I think Barzal was one of them that I got, and every year. So there tends to be a lot of good prospect with pretty good upside in the league as a whole. So, that's why it's kind of sort of tough to evaluate how good a prospect is because, for example, I know Tonin got Newhook, got Kakaniemi from me in a trade, got Newhook in a trade from John. I think maybe even got Morgan Frost in a trade with Blondin. That could be wrong, but all three aren't worth that much at this point because there's so many of that type of player. Now, Byfield's pedigree is obviously higher than these guys, but that's why it becomes kind of hard to evaluate the farm because we can say, like, well, this is last year's farm. Um, let's go back to this one. Like, I can say Gunther and Michelli and Pinto are good, but are they really? Like, even if they're on the Calder race or whatever, they're like kind of comparable to a lot of people that people can either get later in the year this year or just draft next year. Like, they're not gonna. It's unlikely any of them will be like point per game superstars anytime soon. So yeah, it's really for me tough to say after like thinking about it more how we should be evaluating prospects and when should people like ideally trade for them. Like for John or for McKinnon, well, Jake did a great job of hitting it. It's like, is it the best time to trade for this guy? Like optimally, is he gonna like break out in 2 years? I mean, that's like I'm thinking about that stuff. And but that also hurts when you keep people that take forever. Like from what I read, like big forwards that might take a while to develop. So, how long will it take? How old will Byfield and Kako need to be at least a half a point a game or a point per game player? So, and while people are keeping that, that's where I talk about like criticizing goalies. While other people, there's constantly every year a flood of prospects. So people that are able to cycle this or figure out if their guy is a stud or not have an edge just because they're just using the roster spots a lot more. But again, how highly should Byfield? How much should Byfield be worth at this moment? It's or Kako. Is this like the perfect moment to jump in and buy low? Um, yeah, that's all I want to say. Like I don't actually know like at all.